They all laughed at the poor dishwasher, but my unbelievable transformation left them in tears. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The day I stood in the middle of that crowded diner, hands trembling, heart racing, while the laughter swirled around me like a thick fog. Hot tears stung my eyes as I scrubbed away, the metallic scent of soap mixing with the grease that clung to my palms. I was invisible to them, just a shadow of despair in a worn-out uniform that I faced a tragic reality. Every day was a struggle. My boss, a towering figure with a sneer that cut like glass, barked orders while my coworkers tossed snide comments my way. I was the dishwasher, the lowest of the low. They saw me as nothing more than an unskilled laborer, a nobody destined for a life of drudgery. They didn't know. They had no clue about the dreams I carried hidden behind the thick walls of this diner's kitchen, and why family's expectations weighed heavy on my chest. My mother's disappointed sigh echoed in my mind, a painful reminder of the bright future I had squandered of late. My father, once supportive, now only viewed me through the lens of failure. I was drowning, longing for someone to throw me a lifeline, to believe in me. Then on that chaotic day something shifted. A flicker of hope ignited when I spotted a mysterious stranger at the corner table, eyes glimmering like stars. He gazed at me with an intensity that made my heart skip. I felt an unexpected connection, a ripple of possibility, and suddenly, the laughter faded into silence. The moment I approached him, the diner held its breath. In that instant, something extraordinary began to unfold. But I was still lost. Could I really change? Could anyone see beyond that greasy apron? Memories of mockery flashed before me. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. Did I dare to hope? The tension in the room thickened. My palms turned clammy. What if this was just another cruel joke? The anticipation clawed at me, leaving me breathless. I couldn't gauge anyone's reaction. Their laughter echoed in my ears, a haunting melody. But then soft whispers began. Is he? What's happening? I caught my reflection in the stainless steel surface. Was that a glimmer of determination I saw? Just as I opened my mouth to speak, the lights flickered ominously. A hush fell, shocking silence suffocating the diner. My heart raced, pounding like a drum inside my chest. What now? I glanced at the stranger, and he nodded, eyes wide and expectant. My stomach dropped. Could this moment change everything? Or was it merely another illusion? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The moment the lights flickered out, a tense silence hung heavy in the air, as if the diner itself held its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. I felt an electric pulse coursing through my veins, the heartbeat of uncertainty pounding in my ears. There in the dim light, hope flickered and waned like a candle in a drafty room. I fought to steady my breath, my fingers trembling as I searched for words. The stranger leaned forward, eyes focused intently on me. Despite the enveloping darkness, they burned bright, the glimmer of understanding shining through. I longed to reach out, to bridge the chasm of invisibility that separated me from everyone else. Yet a paralyzing fear eased its grip around my throat. What if I opened my mouth and no words came out? What if I revealed my dreams, only to be met with laughter again? Shadows the size of giants loomed in the corners of my mind, reminding me of the laughter from moments before, the ridicule that coursed through my daily life like poison. I felt the heat of embarrassment creeping up my cheeks, and for a brief moment, I almost retreated into the familiar confines of my sorrow. But then, pulling on the shreds of courage I had left, I locked eyes with the stranger. I want to change, I heard myself say, my voice barely above a whisper, trembling with the weight of a declaration that felt both monumental and terrifying. I dream of being more than this. I want to break free. The silence seemed to stretch, each breath feeling like an eternity. I could almost hear the whispers of doubt swirling in the room, but something in the stranger's eyes urged me on, igniting a flame inside me. The whispers didn't matter. I continued, I want to be a chef. I want to create. I want to show them who I really am. A flicker of something, a smile, perhaps crossed the stranger's face, but it was quickly drowned in the ongoing darkness. How could I rely on a flicker of kindness from someone I hardly knew? The world felt so heavy, each expectation and laugh like a stone dragging me down. Then, just as the first hint of hope began to settle in my heart, the lights flickered back on with a harsh hum, illuminating the diner once more. I blinked against the sudden brightness, disoriented, as laughter erupted around me again, jarring me from the moment of connection I had fought so hard to create. The room filled with the familiar scorn as my coworkers resumed their cruel banter. "Look at him. What's he doing talking to someone like that?" one of them barked. Their voice soaked in disdain. I faltered a step back, my courage faltering under the weight of derision. I could feel the heat rise in my chest again. But this time there was something different. A sliver of defiance was emerging from the shadows. Did they not realize I was done being the invisible man? A sudden thought struck me. If I was meant to change, then I had to show them. Not just for me, but for others trapped in the same cycle of ridicule. Sensing something unreliable stirring within me, I straightened my back, taking one last glance at the stranger. His expression was a mixture of encouragement and sadness. Perhaps he understood how the world seemed to conspire against me. I took a step forward, defiance blazing in my heart, ready to confront the laughter that met me. But as I opened my mouth to stand against their jests, the doors slammed open, and in rushed a man in a suit, his face flushed and frantic. The atmosphere shifted instantly, an unsettling wave of uncertainty washing over us. "Get back," he shouted, urgency thick in his tone. "Everyone get down. There's been an accident outside. They need help." My stomach clenched as I processed his words. The laughter faded into stunned silence, and I felt the weight of fear press against my chest. This wasn't just another day. This was chaos unfolding. I exchanged a glance with the stranger, and for a brief moment, our eyes spoke of deep understanding of both fear and the potential for something more. As my coworkers scrambled instinctively toward the doors, I hesitated, caught between the fear of stepping into the unknown and the undeniable urge to embrace the change I had only begun to envision. I clenched my fists and inhaled deeply, feeling the world around me ripple with possibility. Then, without a moment to lose, a realization struck me like lightning. Perhaps this chaos was my chance. Perhaps I could not only change my life but also be the one to help others, to step out of my shadows and into the light. But just as I took my first step toward the front, dread washed over me. What if stepping forward into the chaos meant sacrificing everything I had dreamed of? What if my past held me hostage even in that moment of hope? As I moved toward the door, the weight of uncertainty loomed large, and the fear clung to me tightly. Would this moment lead to transformation? Or would it tear apart everything I clung to? The moment my foot crossed the threshold of the diner, the air transformed from mundane to life-threatening. I had stepped into an arena of chaos, illuminated only by flashing lights and the anxious buzz of voices that swirled around me like a tempest. The world I had known, one of ridicule and despair, seemed to fade into a blurry haze. This was real. This was happening. Outside, cars lay crumpled, their windows shattered like glassy tears caught in frozen shock. Parents were bellowing names, children cried out for their lost toys, and all around me, the echoes of desperation mingled with the steady blare of sirens approaching like a swarm of angry bees. In that moment, it all struck me as more significant than the laughter from behind the safety of the diner's walls. That I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, an erratic drumbeat, urging me to move, to act. My hands trembled slightly, both from fear and an unexpected surge of bravery that urged me onward. The stranger's face flickered in my mind, a beacon of hope pierced through the chaos, urging me forward. "Break free," I whispered to myself, almost letting the affirmation guide me as I plunged deeper into the chaos. Before I could register the weight of my decision, I spotted a girl maybe 8 years old with unkempt curls and wide, terrified eyes, crouching beside a car that barely looked intact. "Mommy!" she wailed, her voice piercing through the clamor. I hesitated for just a moment, considering my own fears, but the image of the stranger's encouraging gaze pushed the dread away. I had to help. "Hey! It's okay," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil. "I'm coming." I rushed toward her, dodging debris, my heart racing not just from fear, but exhilaration, as I realized the power of action over inaction. Her gaze met mine, And for a brief moment, both of us were suspended in that whirlpool of chaos, two souls yearning for reassurance. My mom's in the car. Her voice trembled, a quiver of hope laced with despair. Let's see if we can find her together, I replied, my voice low but emanating warmth that I hoped would calm her fears. As we approached the stricken vehicle, a shadow loomed not of my past doubts, but of a fireman rushing toward us. He was a towering figure, clad in heavy gear, whose confidence enveloped us like a protective cloak. Kids, stay back, he shouted, rushing toward the open door of the car. My heart leapt again, this time with a sentiment I had never felt before, an urge to fight alongside others, to be part of something greater than myself. But just then, the muted laughter from earlier echoed in my mind, voices snickering in the shadows, taunting me about my dreams. What if I failed here too? What if stepping into this chaos was just another stage for the cruel critiques that had plagued me for as long as I could remember? Suddenly, a crashing sound erupted as a section of a nearby fence collapsed under the force of the chaos. The fireman was caught off guard, barely shifting to dodge it, but I saw it coming. Without thinking, I lunged forward, adrenaline coursing through me as I shielded the small girl. The wood grazed my back but did not knock me down. It was the first time I felt empowered by the strength of my own body, in direct contrast to the weakness that had defined my existence thus far. We stumbled into a small cluster of people who had gathered just a short distance away. An older woman clutched her handbag to her chest with white-knuckled intensity. My husband. He's in there, she cried out, pointing toward a wrecked vehicle further down the street, panic flaring in her eyes. Sir, I called over to the fireman who had just pulled the girl's mother from the car. We need help over there. It was a push toward leadership I'd never envisioned for myself, yet it felt invigorating, infusing a rush of purpose within my veins. I was here to make a difference, even if just one person at a time. As a few brave souls began to mobilize behind me, the cries of the injured punctuated the air, but amid it all, hope began to weave itself through the fears dancing precariously on the fringes of my mind. I felt like I was finally stepping closer to the role I was meant to fill. The chef I dreamt of, who didn't merely cook but created a space for healing and connection. Amidst the chaos, I turned to the small girl whose tears shimmered faintly in the dim light. You're so brave, I said, and she managed to smile through her fear, which ignited a flicker within me. But as the moments unfolded, just as fleeting hope began to settle in my heart, a shaking figure emerged from the wreckage of an overturned car, a stranger, bloodied and bruised, whose eyes caught mine with a haunting recognition. It was the man from the diner, the stranger who had ignited my spark of courage. His expression, filled with agony and remorse, sent a shiver coursing through me. In his gaze was a question, an unspoken acknowledgement of the chaos, and perhaps something darker, as if the universe had orchestrated this clashing moment. I could feel my heart shatter beneath the weight of the man who had inspired me to break free now lay before me, both a possibility of hope and a terrifying reminder of the past I longed to escape. Help me, he pleaded, the tremor in his voice threatening to break me. I was torn, caught between the urgency to respond and the tangled web of emotions that clouded my thoughts. In that heartbeat, I realized the fight for change was about to take a turn I never anticipated. The din of chaos echoed around me, a symphony of pain and desperation. Yet within its cacophony, something else brewed, a flicker of eerie connection. The man on the ground, contorted and broken, bore the telltale signs of a survivor, though what haunted his features was far worse than any physical wound he had suffered. I felt anger welling up inside me as he lay there, exposing the fractures of his soul. I wanted to scream at him, to demand how he could possibly have left a mark on someone like me, a stain of regret still burning inside me, when he now resembled a ghost of my turbulent past. But as his trembling hand reached out, desperate for salvation, a part of me succumbed to his plea. Could I be both angel and demon in this shared moment of horror? A hush seemed to envelop the scene, and for a brief heartbeat, the chaos faded into an eerie quiet as I moved closer. What happened? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper, but his eyes found mine with an intensity that sent shivers coursing down my spine. It's my fault, he gasped, his breath ragged, heavy with guilt. I thought I had time to help others. I thought it didn't matter. Each word fell from his lips like stones in a still pond, creating ripples of anguish that spread across my heart. A knot tightened in my stomach. I had once thought similarly, And I could see reflected in him the coward I had always believed I was, too paralyzed to step up until it was almost too late. The girl next to Meth's small girl with wide eyes was oblivious to our exchanged burden. She clutched her mother against her side, the trembling grip her only anchor in this storm of chaos. A flicker of determination surged within me. I turned back to the man on the ground. "We can't leave you here, not like this," I promised, my voice gaining strength. Here was my chance to break the cycle of powerlessness that had latched onto my spirit for so long. He shook his head vigorously, sweat beading on his brow. "You don't understand, get out while you can. There's still time for you." The gravity of his warning hung in the air, thickening the tension around us. Time, eternal enemy and companion. Would I choose to wallow in the shadows of others' failures, or could I finally step into the light of my own? With a nod, I knelt down beside him, the scent of smoke and blood overwhelming my senses. "I can't just leave you. You told me to break free, to step beyond my fears." "Well, I am not going to run," I asserted, clasping his trembling hand in mine. My fingers tightened around his, a spark igniting that spread warmth through the cold battlefield. "Help's coming." I called toward the distant sirens, an attempt to lift myself and him with words of hope. But doubt gnawed at the edges of my assurance. Would it come in time? I could almost feel the weight of the laughter that had lulled me into despair creeping back in, reminiscent of times when I felt nothing but disdain directed toward me in moments of vulnerability. But in that moment of holding him up, a gentle tug on my shirt made me turn, and there the little girl met my gaze, her small face scrunched up in determination. "You're helping him, right? Just like you helped me?" she asked, her innocent belief unearthing my buried bravery. "Yes," I replied, my voice shivering as I recognized her unwavering trust. "Together we will." Mirroring her hope, something inside me began to thaw. The bitter confines of self-doubt began to crack as if the warmth between us was a lifeline holding us steady. Yet, as the screams surged anew and the sirens began to drown out the chaos, something clicked in my mind, a haunting realization nudged by the man's earlier words. "Is that why you were in the diner? To save someone?" His pained expression flickered, and the faintest hint of a smile escaped through the agony. "I didn't know. Not until recently." There were whispers of warning. The nature of my past. It affected everything, everyone. I never thought it would lead to this. His finger traced an outline on my hand, as if carving his regrets into my skin, and just then a familiar voice cut through the noise. "What are you doing? Get away from him." I turned toward the sound, energy surging through me, but dread pooled at the base of my throat. It was the diner owner, a shadow of authority marred with judgment, eyes narrow and untrusting. "He's dangerous. We can't let him get up." Stop," I shouted, a roar erupting from within as I shielded the man with my body. The sudden heat of protection, an instinct so vital it surged through my every fiber, enveloped me in a cloak of defiance against all semblance of doubt. But in that fierce moment, the world shifted again. The sirens finally reached us, but from behind them rushed another figure, an unmistakable silhouette that stole my breath. My heart lurched as I recognized her instantly, my sister, eyes wide with panic, breaking through the crowd. "Where have you been?" I thought she stumbled, her eyes locking onto mine, the turmoil swirling between us, but confusion seemed eclipsed by urgency as she glanced at the man bleeding on the ground. A cacophony of emotions erupted within me. Elation swirled with fear as her presence sent my mind racing. She had always been my anchor, yet in her gaze was a question that could change everything. The juxtaposition of relief and terror twisted through my spirit like a knife, forcing me to confront not just the man on the ground, but the truth spilling forth. Could she hear the laughter in my mind? Would she see me as I had been blind to my own strength? "Help me!" I cried, the desperation in these newfound revelations forging a bond that shattered the illusion of my old life. The man crumpled beneath the weight of my conviction and fears, a mirror reflecting my own horror as the world around us descended further into the abyss. There was no way to prepare for the unanticipated crossroads about to emerge. The laughter echoed louder, but among the chaos, in the gathering darkness, my fight had only just begun. The world around me was a blur of screams and sirens, as my sister's presence became a lighthouse amid the chaos. She surged forward, eyes darting from me to the collapsed man on the ground, struggle etched into her features. Her heart, once steady and secure, now wrestled with a tempest of confusion and fear, reflected in the speed of her breaths that came in shaky bursts. "Who is he?" she demanded, her voice trembling between disbelief and urgency. "What happened?" There was a vulnerability in her tone that pulled at the edges of my resolve, a tether that made me realize just how deeply our lives were intertwined. How one wrong choice could shatter not only me but her as well. "Just help," I pleaded, feeling her internal battle clash with my own burgeoning courage. "He's hurt and I can't leave him." I gestured toward the man, his pain palpable, an unraveling thread that sought to entangle us all. "What do you mean you can't leave him?" she countered, her eyes glimmering with both anger and desperation, a chaotic fusion that mirrored the turmoil inside me. He's hurt just like so many others around us." I interrupted, my voice rising as the crisis spun out of control. The words burst forth, an emotional dam cracking under pressure. Here we were, surrounded by the echoes of the past, our shared history washed over by the waves of choices made, battles fought, and wounds still fresh. This is more than just life and death. He's been through something that connects us all, something we can heal together. The distant wails of sirens grew closer, yet the essential urgency was palpable in our small circle. My sister's hesitance began to melt, her eyes softening as she caught a glimpse of the humanity captivating me. The innocence of the little girl by my side, her unwavering belief that we could become heroes in this horrible story, tugged at the strands of compassion threaded throughout my sister's heart. "Okay," she relented, kneeling beside me, tension slowly releasing. The bond we shared, forged in years of trials, offered strength in these moments. "What do we do?" Incredibly, as I looked at the man again, I sensed a silent communication unfolding. It was as if he understood that this moment was the bridge across our isolation. "We need to stop the bleeding," I said, my mind racing as memories returned of countless hours spent watching paramedics at work on television, the lives of others embedded in every flickering scene. "He just needs to stay conscious until help arrives." Is it too late?" my sister asked, a flicker of doubt dancing across her anxious features. "No," I urged. "We haven't fought hard enough yet." Grabbing her wrist, I pulled her closer, blinking against the dim light of hope that began to gather around us. "We can't let despair win." Not now. With trembling hands, my sister tore a strip of fabric from my shirt, her determination igniting as she pressed it against the man's wound. "You're going to be okay," she whispered under her breath, though I caught the edge of fear beneath her whisper. I focused, channeling everything I had ever repressed into that moment, the courage I thought I had lost, the compassion that had become buried under layers of rejection. Together we held the edges of this fragile hope, an invisible thread tying countless lives into one. But then a chill wind swept through the chaos, as if the world itself dared to interrupt the fragile balance we had started to forge. "Get away from him. He deserves this." The diner owner pushed through the gathering crowd, eyes lit with a manic determination I hadn't foreseen, a man lost in the shadows of his own fears. "Please stop," I shouted, recognizing the danger he represented not only to the man on the ground, but to my fragile thread holding this moment together. "What he deserves is our help." "Help," he spat back, contempt dripping from each syllable. "He brought this upon himself. Look at him. The community is better off without scum like him." My stomach twisted at the words, a hateful symphony revealing the monster hidden in those who couldn't fathom the notion of humanity's shared scars. I knew I'd stumbled into the hate-fueled heart of a conflict that was far larger than any of us. At that moment, the little girl clutched my hand tighter, trying to shield herself from the poisonous atmosphere spiraling around us. "But he's a person, right? Everyone deserves help," she chimed, innocent and unwavering, as if she could convince us all with the light of her belief. Her voice, clearer than any declaration, pierced through the tempest that I had been lost in, an acknowledgement of the truth that salves the raw wounds of collective struggle. Before I could fully process it, a powerful surge of emotion overwhelmed me and burst forth in a scream of defiance. Are we not all broken in our own way? Does that give any of us the right to cast stones? As silence washed over the crowd, questions hovered like smoke in the air. In that moment I could see the shifting expressions on faces around me: doubt, conflict, and for a single heartbeat, the realization that no one was immune to suffering. But before relief could sweep through us, another figure emerged from the sidelines, an icon of authority, a paramedic, uniform immaculate, voice steady amid the storm. What's going on here? His authoritative presence brought renewed tension and fear, the air thickening as if the ground itself had shifted beneath our feet. In that charged silence, pain thundered through our collective heartbeat, and I could feel the fragile vein of hope begin to crack once more. Would my sister and I manage to break this cycle? Or would we succumb to the laughter of the world, where despair reigned unchallenged? And then I caught a glimpse of the man's face, pained yet resolute, a spark of defiance igniting within him, as he locked eyes with me, his spirit calling to mine. Despite the shadows encroaching, the laughter fading momentarily, he spoke with the weight of his haunting past. You'll see. The truth always comes out. The last words echoed through me, resonating with impending dread, as I felt the ground beneath my feet shift again. In that charged moment of doubt and revelation, I couldn't shake the feeling that an avalanche was about to descend, one that could tear apart everything I held dear. The ground trembled beneath the weight of those words, and for a split second, the chaos of the world around me faded away. All that remained were the glances exchanged among the crowd, their faces a blend of confusion and contemplation. The paramedic's piercing gaze washed over us, assessing the scene with an expert eye. I could feel the fragile thread of hope pulling taut as the tension escalated. Step back, everyone, he instructed, raising a hand to part the sea of onlookers. Give these two some space. His voice cut through the noise, an unexpected beacon in the darkness. I felt my sister's hand squeeze mine tighter, her warmth a comforting reassurance in the midst of the storm brewing around us. How is he? I blurted out, desperate to keep our moment of defiance alive. The paramedic glanced down at the wounded man before turning back to me, eyes softening. That he needs immediate care. Keep applying pressure. His gaze shifted to my sister as she pressed the makeshift bandage against the wound, her brow furrowed in concern. You're doing great, but we need to move quickly. Can I trust you both to keep doing what you're doing for just a few more minutes? Yes, of course. I stammered, encouraged by his faith in us. But just as I thought we might scale back the rising panic, I heard the diner owner's voice again, laced with scorn. They're wasting their time. He's nothing but a worthless enough. The paramedic's voice roared, an unexpected surge of authority cutting through the air with startling clarity. This man, regardless of his past, is in need of help. No one is worthless here. The ground beneath me felt firmer, a promise of resolve crystallizing in the air. I locked eyes with my sister, her expression shifting from fear to determination, and then to something akin to hope. It was a delicate balance, one that could break with a single word. Yet at that moment we stood on the brink of something profound. As the paramedic worked quickly, the gathered crowd seemed to pause, caught in an unwritten debate that raged within their souls. Murmurs of dissent and agreement echoed through the throng, as each person wrestled with the sudden realization that perhaps they too bore scars hidden beneath their skin. But then, the wounded man shifted slightly beneath my sister's care. Wait, he rasped, his words low and hoarse but laced with undeniable strength. I want to tell my story. Not now, the paramedic urged. But the man shook his head, a flicker of fire igniting behind his pained eyes. No, they need to hear this. And in that single moment, something transformative sparked within me, tethering me to the man whose struggle felt inexplicably connected to my own. Then he looked up, his eyes, haunted yet resolute, met mine. I've been through hell, one I thought I could face alone. But sometimes the walls we build only trap us further. Even those of us who seem lost, we matter. We're human, just like everyone else. His voice wavered with vulnerability, yet rang with a conviction I couldn't ignore. The crowd hung on his every word, a silent communion forming as they leaned in closer, each hitch of breath drawing them into the orbit of his truth. It was as if a spell had been cast, binding us together in shared humanity, fear melting into an undeniable recognition of mutual pain. My heart thundered as I breathed in the weight of his honesty. Somehow, his confession drew my own experiences forth, clawing at the dam I had built around my truth, the truth I carried like a burden, one I had hidden even from my sister. The losses, the heartaches, the moments that had shattered my spirit all lay bare within me, pricking at the surface, urging to be set free. But just as I felt the swell of courage rise within my chest, the paramedic continued working expertly, preparing the man for transport. I turned to my sister, her eyes wide, failing to mask her surprise at the depth unfolding in front of us. Maybe we should, I began, my voice caught in the whirlwind of emotion threatening to engulf me. But before I could finish, a shrill sound pierced through the tranquility. That was colliding with chaos. The unmistakable siren of another ambulance reverberated in the distance, a dissonant reminder of what lay ahead. It came like an omen, warning me that this moment, however profound, was a mere prelude to the rising storm. As the paramedics arrived and took over, I could see the diner owner retreating, anger etched in the lines of his face, mouth opening as if to unleash another bitter retort. But the community's attention was drawn away, an unspoken agreement forming amidst the shared vulnerability we had glimpsed together. The man caught my gaze one last time, his expression a silent request. "It's not over," he murmured, a tremor in his voice laden with anticipation. As the paramedics lifted the wounded man onto the stretcher, I seized this electrifying moment, the opportunity one had been yearning for. "Wait," I called, adrenaline surging as I stepped forward. "We can't let this end here. We must keep talking." Or all this, I struggled to find the right words, the enormity of it catching in my throat. Or it might just fade away while we stay silent. The paramedics paused, their hands faltering as the man looked up at me, a glimmer of gratitude moving beneath the surface of his pain. The crowd shifted uneasily, as the unspoken potential of this moment pulsed in the air, pregnant with possibilities. And then my sister stepped up beside me, her hand resting gently on my arm, her resolve mingling with mine. "You're right," she whispered, voice steady despite the chaos swirling around us. "Everyone has a story worth telling. We can't forget who we are." The diner owner stood mute, shadows of his beliefs crumbling under the weight of our honesty, and for the first time, I noticed the trembling of his hands. But in that instant of vulnerability, a panic scream pierced through the air, drawing all eyes back toward the street. A figure sprinted through the crowd, clothes disheveled, panic etched on their face, bearing the unmistakable signs of trauma. "Where is he?" the newcomer shouted, eyes wild. "Where's my brother?" And just like that, the fragile moment we had carved out together shattered, sending us careening back into the depths of uncertainty. I felt the weight of the man's gaze as he struggled against the frantic scene unfolding. The air hung heavy with fear. What was his truth? What had just begun to untangle? In that precarious space, heartbreak and transformation danced dangerously close, teetering on the brink of an even deeper revelation that begged to be unearthed. As the new arrival's voice rang out, I watched disbelief wash over the wounded man's features. He struggled against the restraints of the stretcher, his eyes alight with something that bordered on despair. The paramedics, caught between the urgency of their task and the sudden swell of emotion, hesitated momentarily, creating a stillness filled with tension. "Your brother." The paramedic's brow furrowed at the young man's plea, and he exchanged worried glances with his colleagues. It was clear now that Wed stumbled into a fractured web of stories, each thread dangling precariously as hearts beat unevenly among us. "Someone find him," the newcomer pleaded, and I could hear a raw edge to his voice that spoke of desperation. He was right behind me. He wouldn't leave me. I could see now the fear in the crowd, as if the earlier connection of shared experiences had dissolved into the atmosphere, leaving us standing on the precipice of chaos once more. What had begun as a moment of vulnerability morphed swiftly into confusion, my heart racing at the potential for yet another heart-wrenching story to unfold before us. I turned back to the wounded man, searching his eyes for some understanding, a glimmer of connection that would spark a way through this fresh turbulence. "Help us," he gasped, his breath hitching as the weight of the urgent plea consumed the space around us. "Please, I can't lose him too." With each strained syllable, it felt as though a part of him was breaking. Each word was a fragment of the agony he had guarded within. And then, through the turmoil, a sweet surprise emerged. An elderly woman stepped through the throng, her kind smile breaking through the clouds of anxiety that shrouded us all. "I saw him. Your brother," she declared, her voice warm and enveloping. "He made it across the street before the panic hit. He's looking for you." Even in the face of turmoil, the crowd seemed to breathe collectively, the tension shifting again. Hope sprouted quietly amidst the chaos, a testament to the resilience that resides within the human heart. The young man jerked forward, disbelief etched on his face. "He's safe." The woman nodded gently. "Yes, dear. I saw him waiting. I don't think he knows about the accident. We should tell him together." The paramedics moved efficiently now, their earlier hesitance replaced by a newfound urgency. The wounded man, eyes glistening, turned to meet me once more. A flicker of something profound swirling within his gaze. "You too," he murmured, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the magnetic pull of his pain. "You have to speak. Your voice. It could free so many of us." I felt as if the ground was giving way again beneath me, swallowing every thought that had coiled at the tips of my fingers. What was I to say? Would they hear me? Would my past chime with theirs too? "I don't know how," I whispered back, the weight of my unanswered struggles clinging to my throat. "Start with hope," he breathed, a sigh escaping his lips as he attempted to sit up further, even as the paramedics worked with shouts of "steady," urging him to relax. "That's a place we can all begin from." Those words ignited something deep within, a residue of the raw truth I had so carefully hidden from everyone, even from my sister. Her hand found mine again, squeezing tighter as if lending me her strength. As the paramedics slid the gurney toward the waiting ambulance, I heard more sirens approaching in the distance. My gaze wandered to the crowd, their faces a mosaic of concern, each keeping their own stories close, but beginning to weave a connection through shared hope. We could face this together, yet uncertainty loomed heavy in the air. "What if they don't care?" I murmured, the dread of rejection clawing its way back into my chest. "They will," my sister replied, steadfast in her belief, her voice a quiet promise amid the unfolding chaos. "Because deep down we all want to be heard. To know we're not alone." The urgency of the moment propelled the paramedics into action, but I stayed rooted, feeling the specter of my truths, the stories I had buried alive. I could no longer pretend they didn't matter. But just as I resolved to step forward, a sharp shout cut through the air, a frantic plea that sent the crowd spilling in every direction as panic surged anew. I said, "Stay back." A police officer's voice boomed, a warning echoing down the street as a third ambulance slid recklessly close to the others, its wheels screeching against the asphalt. And then I saw something I never expected: a shadow darting across the street, weaving between the frightened clusters of people still clutching at their hearts. There, in the swarming tide, escaped a figure draped in a dark hoodie, eyes wide with terror, desperation painting their features akin to a haunting. They locked eyes with the wounded man, and time froze. "Get away from him!" the young man shouted, but I felt my voice fail me as recognition washed over my senses. It was someone I hadn't thought about in ages, not since the day I learned to bury my past deep beneath my skin. My breath hitched, the magnitude of what was about to unfold looming overhead. Here, on the edge of a new tumult, my heart raced, and my story teetered on the brink of exposure. I wanted to turn to my sister, but before I could even blink, their eyes locked. The understanding between them ignited a world of questions that surged to life. What would happen next in this fragile web of converging fates? The gentle murmur of hope I thought had settled refused to dim, yet the new uncertainty pulled tighter again, a strand tangled within the cords of our shared vulnerabilities. In that breathless pause, with hearts laid bare and stories ready to spill, the journey had only just begun, yet the weight of the unknown hovered like a storm on the horizon, threatening to uncover everything each of us had tried desperately to hide. I felt the ground trembling with revelations yet to come, echoing our connection to one another, drawing us all closer to the truths waiting to be revealed. A final gift, tightly wrapped in the chaos of our shared humanity. As the dawn began to stretch its fringes across the horizon, the soft light caught the chaos still lingering in the air. Shadows danced against the cracked pavement, remnants of yesterday's turmoil now muted under the coming sun. The crowd, once frantic, had fallen into a whispering hush as emotions settled in the aftermath of the urgency. Around me, faces were etched with worry and anticipation, yet a fragile hope had begun to weave through the fabric of our lives, binding us together, even as our individual stories remained unspoken. A paramedic, adrenaline still evident in her movements, rushed by with a determined focus. I grasped the moment, stepping forward, the wounded man's plea echoing in my mind. "You have to speak. Your voice. It could free so many of us." The urgency of it pricked at my conscience, and I tried to quell the wave of self-doubt threatening to drown me. "Please, help him," the young man I had seen darting through the crowd pleaded again, his voice slicing through the morning's haze. "Take him to the hospital. He needs to be treated. We can't just leave him here." I sought the wounded man's eyes once more, those deep wells of sorrow and hope. Despite the collective nature of our distress, his gaze held its own weight, anchoring me to the moment. My sister's hand tightened around mine, grounding me as the world threatened to tilt once more. Amidst the soft murmurs, the elderly woman who had first brought a glimmer of light stepped forward again. Her gentle heart lay bare. "Darling," she began, her voice steady, "they will help him. But we must keep the faith." Together. A chorus of agreement rippled through our gathering. What had once been mere strangers now stood united, tethered by an invisible thread of shared humanity. The chaos could no longer reign alone. But then came that treacherous call of the familiar. The shadow from the depths of memory emerged once more. I turned, drawn into the vortex of what could be the most pivotal moment of my life. Eyes locked with those of the figure cloaked in desperation, the dark hoodie offering no comfort, only dread. "Cade?" My breath escaped me as I whispered the name I once adored but learned to filter through the lens of pain. The laughter that had accompanied our childhood memories transformed into a facade of trust long shattered. "Why are you here?" The question slipped from my lips, heavy and pained, drawing everyone's attention as fingers hovered over their lips in a collective gasp. A recognition passed through us. An invisible fracture echoed between what we wanted to believe and what we had all lost. "I'm not here for chaos," Cade stammered, the shadows of regret branding his expression. "I just wanted to see if you were okay. I never thought." "Never thought what? That you'd come back and hurt everyone again?" I interjected, the sting of betrayal prickling my heart. "What were you thinking, Cade? Stop it," the young brother interjected, stepping toward us with a fierce protectiveness that shocked me. "You don't know what he's been through." "None of us do." An air of confusion wrapped itself around us, a tangled thread of emotions ready to unravel. Time itself felt as if it were surging forward and pulling us in its wake. Yet I stood paralyzed. The flickering flame of hope I clung to swayed precariously as the confrontation deepened. I caught the whispers of the crowd, words of sympathy mingling with those laced with disdain. "Cade," the weight of our past hung thick in the air, viscous and unyielding. "You don't get to just show up and ask for forgiveness like it's as simple as that. You broke me." As my voice filled with that familiar blend of anger and hurt, I glimpsed something flicker in Kadia Ranis. I couldn't discern if it was regret or simply fear, but it felt overwhelming enough to shift the atmosphere. Silence, heavy yet tense, fell around us. "I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry," he managed, his own voice trembling as though relinquishing the burden of countless unsaid apologies. "I never meant to leave you." I struggled too. "I thought if I disappeared it would mend what I broke." "See now," a desperate plea echoed in the distance, reminding us of the wounded man still awaiting care. Yet I found myself torn. My heart grappled between anger and a burgeoning desire to understand. Amidst all this chaos, Cade's eyes locked onto mine, piercing through my defenses. "But I've changed. I can't change what happened, but I'm no longer the person I was back then." A murmur of disbelief swept through the crowd. My sister, sensing my internal struggle, unified our thoughts simply by squeezing my hand tighter. "Cole needs us," she whispered, grounding me once more as a new urgency flooded my senses. The paramedics had returned, coaxing the wounded man toward the awaiting ambulance. "He needs to know we're with him. Remember?" Our collective stories yearned to be heard. Yet here was Cade, the ghost of my past, attempting to reshape the narrative. How could I even begin to sort through the ruins of what we had once shared? With a heavy heart, I turned from him, caught between seconds that felt stretched taut, each breath filling with unanswered questions. The whisper of hope I had so desperately clung to now wavered uncertainly, begging for direction. "Cade," I began, my voice softening despite the rough edges circling my thoughts. "I don't know if you can fix what we lost, but you showing up, it does matter. Just not right now." As I turned back, determination ignited within me, tethered to the wounded man, and the corners of bravery emerging amidst the shadows, yet darkness still pooled, betraying the battle raging within. It was a moment of every ending and every beginning, a stretching of the soul into something uncharted. Surrounding voices faded, replaced by the pounding of my heart, echoing the weight of the journey ahead, a fateful path balancing between hope and heartbreak, intertwined with past mistakes, and the glimmers of healing. And just as I opened my mouth to speak my truths, a guttural scream reached my ears from across the street, turning our peace into an uproar of scattered cries. The police officer's call rang out once more, sending shockwaves through the crowd, as the all-too-familiar panic surged anew. I stood frozen for an agonizing moment, the worst kind of dread sinking its claws in deep. The realization settled on my shoulders like a storm cloud. This was only the beginning of everything unraveling. No one was free from the truths that must rise to the surface. The crowded space twisted into confusion again, and the stories we clung to began to fray, unraveling before our very eyes as we braced for the impending storm. The morning air, still tinged with the remnants of some lingering darkness, crackled with a palpable tension as the crowd swelled with anxiety, their collective breath held as if anticipating the arrival of fate's next revelation. I glanced around, searching for familiar faces in the throng, but the chaos had morphed us all into faceless participants in a grim play. Fear twisted around me, tightening my chest as the scream echoed across the street, sharp and desperate. A voice desperately seeking help. I turned toward the source, just as the vision of a police officer scrambling into action pushed a wave of dread through the crowd. The hopes ignited by the sunrise were quickly extinguished by shouts of urgency, the newly restored order of our gathering now teetering on an abyss. "What's happening?" my sister asked, her voice trembling slightly as she clutched my hand tighter, her fingers digging into my skin as if trying to ground herself in what felt increasingly surreal. I saw her eyes flit back to Cade, and something shifted in his expression. An echo of recognition etched across his features as he strode toward the chaos, perhaps hoping to play some role in mending the fractures that were appearing all around us. I struggled to understand how he would move toward danger when his very presence felt so volatile, so perplexing. But then, I remembered the bond we once shared and the spark of courage he'd sparked in me as a child when we played superheroes, conquering monsters in our imaginations. It felt like a cruel irony now, painfully reminding me of everything at stake. The crowd surged forward, instinctively drawn to the screaming, swirling around the scene like moths to flame. Among the hysteria, a few brave souls plowed through the chaos, searching for clarity or a way to help. My heart raced as I could see the paramedics struggling to move the wounded man into the safety of the ambulance, their expressions grave like the creeping storm that licked at our heels. "Stay here. Everyone stay back." A voice boomed, a police officer trying to maintain some semblance of order, but no one was listening. A cacophony of concern and uncertainty fluttered through the air, the words rapidly melding into a symphony of panic. "What if it's worse than we thought?" I whispered to my sister, anxiety curling my fingers. What if this is an attack? But as uncertainty curled tightly around my thoughts, Kate's hand landed on my shoulder. I nearly recoiled, but instead I paused, searching for some sign of sincerity or at least the shadow of the person I once loved. "We can't stand here," he urged, his voice low and insistent. "You can help. You felt it before. You're stronger than you know." "Stronger than I know?" I scoffed softly, feeling the weight of every hurt he'd inflicted on me anchor me to my place. Is that supposed to be the mantra to live by? If I were stronger, I wouldn't be feeling this way in the first place. "Stop. Just stop and breathe for a second." Cade's words pierced through my retort, a command wrapped in desperation. "Please. Just trust me. There are people in trouble, and we need to stand together or else what?" I snapped back, frustration bubbling to the surface. "What do you know about standing together, Cade?" But deep down, I could feel the gravity of our shared past pulling me toward an unexplainable urge to unify against a new foe, the chaos looming on the horizon, demanding our attention. As adrenaline surged through me, I saw the faces of those in the crowd, the elderly woman, the young brother, the paramedics, and I understood we were all grappling with similar fears. A small voice inside me whispered that perhaps the remnants of empathy we forged in the early moments of the melee could spark a coalition of strength. I had felt the burden of hopelessness once before, and now it was dawning on me that if I truly wished to break the cycles of pain, I could either hide from the storm or face it alongside those who needed it, including Cade. Swallowing hard, I took a breath and nodded toward the crowd, which had begun to shift as more people shouted for answers. "All right, then let's help." Together we plunged into the maelstrom of humanity, searching for those needing aid and comfort. I didn't know if I could trust Cade again, or if my heart would remain irreparably fractured, but I couldn't deny the flicker of hope igniting within me, fighting against the despair cloaked in memories of betrayal. As we ambled closer, I spotted the source of the commotion, a cluster of people standing just outside the core of the panic, some shielding an older man, unresponsive on the ground. It all felt eerily familiar, awakening a flood of emotions I didn't know I still hid deep within. I kneeled beside him, searching for signs of life, feeling the pulse of urgency thrumming in my veins. "Is he alive?" A soft voice erupted from the crowd, and I looked up to find the eyes of a teenager, a girl no older than 16, peering out from the edges of the onlookers, worry etched on her face. The air thickened as I dared to touch his shoulder lightly, whispering, "Please be alive." My fingers trembled against his skin, but I couldn't quite turn away. Every instinct demanded I reach out and fight against the inevitable, and for some odd reason, I felt Cade's presence at my back, steady and reassuring. Our momentary silence was broken by the sound of sirens, hope and dread dancing a precarious equilibrium. As the first paramedic arrived, her face taut with determination, I thought about the fragility of life, the need for every second to matter. Then, I noticed something glinting in the fallen man's pocket, barely visible but emitting a faint light. I hesitated before reaching in, my heart pounding as I pulled out a small tarnished locket, its engraved surface catching the sun in a flash of brilliance. In that moment, the world around me contorted, time suspending as I unlocked the clasp, revealing a picture of two smiling children, a boy and a girl, faces that looked curiously familiar. A shiver cascaded down my spine, sending a new wave of confusion coursing through my thoughts. "Cade," I mumbled, glancing over my shoulder, the weight of the locket pressing heavily in my hand. I think this man might be connected to the past we thought we buried." In that fleeting moment, as all eyes turned back toward the unconscious figure, and the scattered whispers surged again, I knew something much deeper was at stake. My heart raced as the truth began to unfurl, a potential fracture between past and present now glimmering with ominous possibilities. And before I could voice my growing dread or explain my discovery, another scream cut through the air, sharper than the first, sending us all spiraling back into the abyss of impending chaos. The world around us began to shift once more, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay ahead could seal the fates of all entwined within its grasp. The chaos dimmed into a heavy silence as the scream echoed into the distance, the air growing thick with tension. My heart hammered in my chest as I felt it resonate with the uncertainty of our situation, an unseen opponent lurking amongst us, waiting to tear open the wounds we thought we could hide. The locket, still warm in my palm, whispered secrets of a past I hadn't dared confront. Cade shifted beside me, his presence both a comfort and a torment, a reminder of everything I had worked so hard to bury. I caught a glance of his face, and earnestness mingled with regret. "We can't keep running from the past," he finally said, his voice steady yet full of unspoken burdens. "Running?" I echoed incredulously, the word biting sharply in the fragile air, hanging laden with emotions. "You think I'm the one running?" I motioned towards the broken man on the ground, the faint outline of humanity still flickering behind the heavy waves of despair. "He needs help. We all need help." As the paramedics descended upon us, lifting the man with careful precision, I felt the eyes of the crowd digging into my back. The old tales of bravery and defiance rushed through me. For so long I'd veiled my truth beneath a cloak of invisibility, blending with shadows and echoes, and yet, here we all were, connected by shared suffering and wounds re-inked. In that moment, the flash of the locket prompted a memory long buried. Two children streaming laughter behind a playground. A gentle hand offering warmth in a storm. Was that really all gone? Would there be no road to forgiveness for moments lost in the echoes of laughter turned to tears? The wounded man stirred slightly, his eyelids fluttering against the fog of death and life. My heartbeat quickened, surrendering to a newfound urgency. The echo of the past danced dangerously close, beckoning each of us to step up to choose courage over despair. Tension wavered as I stepped forward. "This man. He knew us," I declared, and the crowd turned its focus, their murmurs fading as they gripped this new reality. "He has a story that, like ours, needs to be told." "Is this a game?" Cade countered, fear faintly coating his voice as he stood behind me, matching my resolve with his own. "If it is, it can and will end poorly. We need to protect ourselves." "Protect?" My voice rose, emboldened by emotion. "What about him? What about all of us? We can't let fear hold us prisoner." Together we bridged the gap, Cade's unexpected warmth as he knelt beside me, anchoring me to this moment. And when the paramedics lifted the man onto the stretcher, I felt the collective intake of breath of hope you could almost taste in the air. "That he has a family, and they deserve to know what happened," I pressed, urgency driving my words. "We can help make sense of this for him." In that moment, I could see sparks of recognition igniting in the faces of the crowd, a reflection of our intertwined fates, as histories folded together in a delicate tapestry of loss and love. The weight of our shared humanity shone brightly in that collective breath, charged with possibility. Hope surged again. The paramedics, momentarily united by my conviction, nodded. Well and sure he makes it to the hospital, one assured, meeting my gaze pleadingly. As the stretcher swung into action, my eyes fell back on Cade, whose expression flickered with something I couldn't quite discern. Was it guilt, regret, or something deeper, something he too was holding inside? Cade, you have to go with me, I urged, ignoring the disapproval etched on his face. We have to be there for him, for those who need us. It's the only path to healing. My brother, he hesitated, but I could see the internal struggle in his eyes, a flicker of realization piercing through layers of doubt. I don't know if it's what he needs. And what about you? I pressed, snatching hold of his story as fiercely as I had felt our shared loss. When will you realize you are worthy of healing? We're all wounded here, but we can't make it alone. A softness crossed his features, the cast of shame softening as longing seeped between us. Often shame would grow heavy with the call of desire beneath it, a deep-rooted yearning for closeness that left us both raw. I will try, he whispered, and it was only then I saw a pivot of transformation buried in vulnerability. As the ambulance door swung shut, I sensed a shift. Our layered past was not merely a sentence, but a puzzle waiting to be pieced together through courage. Stepping from the shadows felt like an act of defiance against everything that had held us captive for so long. Let's go, I urged, motioning toward the path the ambulance had chosen, fear edging away with every step we took. Together we propelled forward through urgency, through solidarity, through love, and with every heartbeat. The laughter of the past faded a little further away. It was then that the final veil lifted inside me, a smoke-filled room finally clearing and revealing the silhouettes of unresolved pain. Until now, I had thought I would never break free from the past, but standing shoulder to shoulder with Cade and feeling the warmth of the community around us ignited something deep, a potential for forgiveness that linked me to every soul walking beside me. And that powerful moment, as the sun broke completely through the clouds, illuminating the broken path behind us, I could feel the laughter of those who once ridiculed me evaporate into the ether, replaced by the roaring applause of a hopeful chorus. And as I whispered my next breath, a beacon of newfound strength kindled within, a message crafted from every challenge endured, every scar embraced. It's time to heal. Together we would write our stories anew.